Welcome to Dadograms. Today I want to talk about something that most people never want to talk about. That's grief, about loss, about that special kind of pain you feel in your chest like your heart's being torn out. Most people I know don't want to talk about it because they don't know what to do with it. And in a lot of cultures, especially the military, which I've been a member of for a very long time, we kind of just expect to push through and move on. We try not to acknowledge it at all. I know this for fact because I've been there, done that. Now, I'm certainly not a therapist or a grief counselor, but what I am is someone who's been through enough of this in my time that I've got some things that are worth sharing to each and every one of you. And recently, someone reached out to me about how to get past trauma. Specifically, in their case, they were asking about how to get through PTSD. And my answer to them got me thinking about this all over again. So this datagram is for anyone who has lost someone or even lost something important to you, and for those wondering when the pain will stop and if there's a way to get past it quicker. The short answer is it gets better, but not the way most people think, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm Jason M. Garrett, a retired Navy commander and pilot, and I created Dadograms to teach my kids and all of you how to win in life. And sometimes winning in life means knowing how to survive the parts of it that are trying to take you down. Now, the first time I ever really understood what grief was, I was only 5 years old. My grandfather, who I was very close to, died of cancer. And I can remember going to the funeral home and touching his hand in the coffin and realizing how cold it was and being completely confused as to why Grandpa wouldn't wake up. Now, I knew he was dead because that's what everybody told me, but I didn't know what that really meant. As time went on, I knew he was gone and he simply wasn't coming back, and I missed him terribly. For a little boy, I guess that's the purest form of grief there is, the permanent absence of someone I was close to. Before I really understood what the word dead truly meant, I felt it in his absence. Now, that was a long time ago, 1977. And I can tell you, just talking about it right now, I can still feel it right here. Now, fast forward to 2002. Easily the hardest year I can ever recall having. I belonged to the HSL-46 Grandmasters out of Mayport, Florida, and my detachment of 2 helicopters was preparing for deployment in support of combat operations following the September 11 attacks. The country was still on edge, and so were we. One day in March, I walked into our squadron and into a maintenance meeting and instantly realized something was very, very wrong. In that meeting, I learned that one of our squadron's detachments had lost an aircraft during a flight in the Mediterranean Sea on the other side of the world. Overnight, we lost 3 squadron mates, and 2 of them were my friends. Now, when you're in the military, you kind of expect this thing to happen on occasion, and you learn to compartmentalize. You kind of just put it in the back of your mind, you lock it away. Meanwhile, you continue to try to move forward and get the mission done. That's what we do. Now, the hardest part of the whole thing for me, where I wrestled with that horrible stabbing pain in my chest, was at the memorial service that we all went to. It was at the base chapel. We were shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the air wing. Everybody in their service dress blues. Their families were there. There were folded flags, the sound of taps, and oh my goodness, a whole bunch of pain. These were people I had flown with, laughed with, trusted my life with. My wife is a retired Navy pilot too, and she knew them, so it hit her hard as well. When you lose someone in naval aviation, you aren't the only ones who feel it. The entire community does. And then, because the mission doesn't stop, you have to keep going. A few weeks later, I went to sea for workups, a month and a half on USS Normandy, and some really intense flying. We were still feeling our heavy loss as we flew, but we had to keep going. It was hard, but I thought it would get better over time. Never in my life would I have imagined just how much worse it was about to get. When I returned from sea about 2 months after their loss, something happened that I was utterly unprepared for. We were getting ready for something called Det Night. Our detachment was all coming together so that all the families could meet each other, they could swap phone numbers, they could all stay in contact while we were on long cruise for about 6 months. And that night, as my wife and I were getting ready, the phone kept ringing, and it would ring twice and then hang up, twice and then hang up. Very frustrating. Finally, one time it rang 3 times, the caller ID box lit up, and I could actually tell who was calling, and it said my father-in-law's name. And I thought, well, I haven't had a chance to talk to him since I got back to sea, and I wanted to, so I went ahead and called him back. Except I didn't get him on the phone. I got my mother-in-law. And my father-in-law, he was an old A4 pilot in Vietnam. He flew A7s in the Navy. He had retired and he was still flying the T-39 Saberliner out of Pensacola, Florida, a training jet for student naval flight officers. And when I talked to my mother-in-law at that moment, that's when she told me that my father-in-law had been involved in a mid-air collision, and in that very moment, 2 aircraft and 7 lives had been lost. Now, as soon as I came back to reality for a moment and kind of got to thinking about what she'd said, then I realized I need to put her on the phone with Kristen so she can tell her. And so I told her, hey, I'm going to put Kristen on. And she said, nope, you tell her. And she hung up on me. Next thing I know, I'm focused straight in the eyes of my wife, who simply looked at me and said, tell me. And so I did. Now, it was already hard enough when we lost my squadron mates, but this time they weren't friends. This was family. For Kristen, this wasn't just a colleague or a fellow pilot. This was her father, the man who had worn the uniform before her, who had inspired her to fly, who had been at her winging ceremony. He was the reason she became a Navy pilot. Now, I'm not going to get into anything more personal than I already have, but I will just simply say this. That same kind of stabbing pain of loss hit me right here in my chest once again. It was the same as it had always been, times 1,000 at least. This was a totally new terrible I had never experienced before. And I can still remember that one single thought that kept going through my mind is I just wanted to shake my head, clear it away, and realize the whole thing had been a nightmare, that it wasn't true. But there was no shaking my head to get out of it. It was the truth, and he was gone. Later, I became very angry at the disappointment of being robbed of him out of my life. And for everything I felt, I know it was an order of magnitude worse for Kristen, for my mother-in-law, for my brother-in-law. He was a very popular guy, and so many people loved him. Anyway, let me tell you the rest of the story, because this is the part that's applicable to your life if you're struggling with this kind of grief or loss. Not long after the memorial service, our lives got really insanely busy. And in some ways, that was a very good thing for us. I had to leave on long cruise deployment a few weeks later, right into supporting combat operations. Thousands of miles from home, from Kristen, from everything familiar. And for me, everything was new, exciting, intense. We were doing some of the most thrilling and tactically innovative flying we had ever done. And it was chaotic for Kristen too. Yes, she lost her father. Yes, I was gone on long cruise deployment. But she was very busy as the flag aide for an admiral at the time, and this admiral and her were traveling all through South America. And we found out a few days before I left that she was pregnant with our first child. Talk about a crazy life. Now, I'm not going to pretend that our busy lives made everything just good to go, that everything was great. We didn't heal overnight. I certainly didn't. I had strange dreams and nightmares for the entire time I was at sea. But something was happening underneath it that I didn't fully understand until much later. I was accumulating new experiences, real and meaningful experiences. The work of flying missions, of leading people, seeing new places, being part of something larger than my pain. And time was passing. New things were filling in around the edges of the loss. And that's it. That's the mechanism. I just didn't know it yet. After 6 months at sea, I returned home to Kristen, and our lives just seemed to accelerate. A month after I returned, we welcomed into the world our very first daughter. A month after that, we packed up everything we owned and moved from Mayport, Florida, all the way to San Diego, California. The trip across country took us 30 days, where we took our time, saw new things, enjoyed ourselves. Then we settled into our new squadron, met new people. Every day, it was nothing but new experiences for us. And over time, that helped ease the pain away until it was finally only a distant memory. Now, the pain was only a distant memory, not my father-in-law. Now we could talk about him, share stories, laugh at the good ones, and enjoy the experience without that stabbing pain associated with his loss. Time and new experiences, that is the key. It's been 24 years since that happened, and our lives have filled in around the loss in ways that I couldn't have engineered or even planned. It just happened, partly through circumstances, partly through just keeping going. That's what healing actually looks like. It's not a moment, it's a gradual accumulation of new experiences over time. Neither one works on its own, by the way. Time without new experiences just leaves you sitting in the same place, getting older. The grief calcifies, People carry it the same way at 60 that they do at 30 because they never allow anything new in. That happens. New experiences without enough time can overwhelm the healing before it takes hold. You have to give the good things time to sink in. But together, they do work hand in hand. The new experiences don't erase the loss. They don't replace the person you lost. They give you a life that is larger than the grief. It's still in there. It just isn't the whole thing anymore. One more thing worth mentioning about all this, especially when it comes to the time aspect of it, is that the longer someone was part of your life, the longer the healing tends to take. That makes sense. If someone was important to you for a whole 5 years of your life, you're not going to just get past them in 6 months. You got to give yourself time proportional to what amount of time you had with them. That, from my experience, is how it works. Now, there's a quote I shared with a person who reached out to me, and I want to share it with each and every one of you because it captures this whole concept better than I can say it myself. It's the Stonecutter's Creed by Jacob Riis from the late 1800s, and it goes like this. When nothing else helps, I go and look at the stonecutter hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without so much as making a crack. Yet at the 101st blow, it will split in two. And I know it wasn't that blow that did it, but all the blows that had come before. Does that make sense? The healing that you're doing right now, even when it feels like nothing is working, is not wasted. Every good experience, every morning you get up and keep moving forward, all of that is hammering the rock. You may not see the crack yet, but the work is accumulating, and one day it just splits. Now, I have to say something important because this idea of new experiences can be misunderstood in a dangerous direction. I've seen all kinds of strange things in my time in the Navy, so I do have to make sure I warn you of this one. New experiences need to be good ones. I've watched people in grief reach for things that feel like relief in the short term, but create new problems. Alcohol, drugs, reckless spending, the party scene, impulsive decisions made from pain rather than judgment. All of those feel like movement, but they aren't the new good experiences that I'm talking about here. They're escapes that circle back around and add weight to what you're already carrying. The kinds of experiences that I'm actually talking about here, the ones that'll actually help you, are meaningful work, real friendships, physical activity, being part of something larger than yourself, learning something new, going somewhere like I did. That's tremendously helpful. Being around people who are steady and positive. Remember, I talk a lot about you are the sum of the 5 people you hang out with the most. Do you need to upgrade the people you're hanging out with to help you get through these hard times? You don't want to be around people who just let you spiral, but you want to be with people who sit with you and also gently pull you forward. That distinction matters enormously. The right kind of support makes a real difference too. A counselor, a trusted friend that has been through that same kind of loss is tremendously helpful. Even a small steady group at church. You don't need a crowd. You need a few people who are actually present. And the environment you're surrounded by matters more than you realize. Change the scenery a little. Change who you spend time with. Give yourself something different to walk into every day. For the person who reached out to me the other day, the fact that you're asking the question is already a sign that you're moving in the right direction. Curiosity about how to heal is itself a step toward it. I think about my father-in-law. I think about the squadron mates that I lost in 2002, as well as others that I've lost during my time in the military. I think about my grandfather, gone before I was old enough to know him the way I wish that I had, as well as so many beloved family members that I've mourned along the way. The grief doesn't disappear. I felt it pounding in my chest as I've tried to record this here today. I wouldn't want it gone entirely. After all, it's part of loving someone. The weight of it is proportional to what they meant. But it changes. With time and new good experiences layered over and around it, it becomes something you carry differently. Less like a wound and more like a scar. Still there, part of you, but not the thing that stops you from moving forward. If you're in the middle of something hard right now, I want to say this loud and clear. One simple thing. Keep going. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because it does. Keep taking in those new experiences over time, and one day, just like the stonecutter who kept swinging and eventually broke through, so can you. New good experiences and time. That's how it gets better. Not all at once, but over time. I'm Jason M. Garrett, and this has been your Dadogram.